Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames with another video, and sadly not the most happiest of videos that I'm ever going to make on this channel, and that is we're talking about, what else do I want to talk about in life? Xenoblade. More specifically, Xenoblade X isn't really selling. And what this really ultimately means is that the franchise isn't really growing. And how do we know this? Well, so we recently got Nintendo's financials for their end of the year, for their last quarter, and for the whole full year, which encompassed January, February, and March 2025. We got to see what games basically crossed the million mark, because Nintendo only, in their quarterly financials, they only ever talk about games that cross the 1 million mark, either within that quarter, or if it's a game that like boosted, say like, Zelda sold like 200,000 more copies, or they sold 400,000 more copies of Smash Brothers, and now that ticked, the total sales of said old game up even higher. And so, March 20th is when Xenoblade X Definitive Edition released worldwide for the Nintendo Switch, and it had 11 days on the market, and it was not in their financial highlights, which means it did not sell 1 million copies. Now, a lot of people, your immediate jump the gun reaction, if you can make it more than 2 minutes into a video, is that, well, it only had 11 days. We can't expect that many sales 11 days. Yes, you can. First of all, RPGs tend to be extremely front-loaded, and this is the kind of franchise where usually you have like a lot of pre-orders for it and special editions. Now, we did not get a special edition for Xenoblade X. It's the only Xenoblade game on the Switch that didn't get a special edition, so that certainly didn't help things much at all. But I'll get to a little bit more on that. But combined with the pre-orders from the game, which was announced last October to launch date, and then 11 days, nearly 2 weeks of people having the opportunity to purchase said game even without a pre-order, it still did not crack 1 million. Again, like for comparison's sake, certain games like Metaphor sold 1 million copies in 1 day. It took like 3 days, and Claire Obscure Expedition 33 sold 1 million copies. Brand new IP from a brand new studio, sold 1 million copies in 3 days from word of mouth, and it's already past 2 million in less than 10 days, and it's probably going to be at 3 soon enough. Deservedly so. I'm not saying like, oh, like these games. No, deservedly so. But at the end of the day, right now, I believe this is the first time a Xenoblade game on the Switch has released, even though it was pretty close to the end of the quarter, and it didn't crack 1 million. Last count, which is actually years old at this point, both Xenoblade 1 Definitive and Xenoblade 3 sold 1.9 million copies lifetime. The vast majority of those games' sales were within its first quarter. So, for example, Xenoblade 3, which released at the very, very end of July, like July 29th, the year it came out, which means it had basically 2 months. 2 months counted for the quarter, and that's where like 1.5 or 1.7 million copies of Xenoblade 3 was sold in the first 2 months. We don't even know, it could be even shorter than that because we don't know the exact time frame. We just know that counting from July 29th all the way up to September 30th, it sold like over 1.5 million units. And then it eked out another 400,000 copies, maybe a little more since then. So again, these games are front-loaded. This genre is front-loaded. Most of the people who play this game is front-loaded. So, I mean, regardless of how you feel about the timing, if you're still in this video, because I know people kind of like to comment they read the title of a video and they comment without watching. Yeah, I'm calling you out, YouTube. The thing is that we as a fan base, for those of us who love Xenoblade and are going to be there day one for Xenoblade, that's less than 1 million people. So Nintendo basically just got confirmation straight up that there are less than 1 million solid Xenoblade fans. Now, to be fair, this is a remaster. This is a remaster of a game on the Wii U, which also failed to sell 1 million units. And I think there is some nuance here that we can look into. One, again, this is a remaster of a game that already exists. It's a game that people have had opportunities and ways to play the game. Now, the Wii U sold 13 million hardware units lifetime. Xenoblade X never cracked 1 million units even on the Wii U worldwide, and the Switch is over 150 million Switches have been sold, and we can't even get like 1%. We can't even get less than 1% of Switch owners to buy Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. So it's kind of, if anything, it's kind of a depressing fact that knowing that, like, okay, no matter how much of a Xenoblade fan you are or have become, like whether you started on the Wii with the first game, whether you jumped in with the Switch, there are less than 1 million of us who will be there day one no matter what. At least for remasters, as far as that's concerned. Because, to be fair, like, I do think that does have a bit of a something to do with maybe why didn't we get to 1 million, immediately with Xenoblade X. We did get there with Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition, but Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition is frankly a little more well-regarded, well-beloved, and hey, it's the start of the franchise rather than a spin-off that Xenoblade X actually is. So there's that. Now let's talk about a couple other reasons like why this might have happened. This is where I fling a little bit of mud at Nintendo, especially Nintendo of America. We're kind of back to the Wii days where Nintendo of America doesn't really want to do anything with the franchise that is Xenoblade. Oh, thanks for the loop, Nintendo. That's fantastic. So we're back in the Wii days. They didn't want to do translate, localize Xenoblade 1 in North America. Again, if you're still in the video, thank you. But a lot of people like to think Operation Rainfall is how we got Xenoblade. No, it's not. I know this firsthand because I had firsthand communication with Nintendo of America at that time, and I can tell you the reason Xenoblade 1 came over to America at all in any capacity was because of the sales of Xenoblade 1 in Europe. Nintendo of Europe and their efforts are the only reason it got brought over to North America. And remember, when it did, it only came to GameStop exclusively and on Nintendo's own website. So they had a extremely limited run, and GameStop footed the bill for the retail build of it. And then the other two games, Nintendo completely passed on anyways, and Xseed picked them up. So it's a weird thing where I hate to have to, I hate having to constantly say this, but Operation Rainfall is not the success necessarily you think it is. It is a success because it got someone like Xseed and Nintendo of even Europe to maybe look at it, but Xseed in particular was well aware of the demand, and it paid off for them beautifully because at the time, Last Story became their best-selling game ever. But yeah, the point is we're kind of back in that era where Nintendo of America really doesn't want to deal with they don't know how to deal with, because it is such a different franchise from the usual Nintendo brand of family-friendly, safeness, and they just don't know what to do. And I think another problem with, in particular, Xenoblade X, which we're kind of seeing the after effects of, is Xenoblade 3 didn't do as well as Nintendo probably hoped for it to do, and I feel like they've kind of shrugged off. And let me give you an example here. Xenoblade 3, when it was announced, was their big direct ender in February. And then it got a release date bumped up. And then it got its own special, unique Xenoblade 3 direct, in June of the year it came out. And then the game comes out and it doesn't quite take off that well. Again, October, November, December of that year rolls around, and all of the sales have tapered off drastically. So we get to the point now where I think Nintendo was kind of well, we tried to push Xenoblade with a third game, a brand new entry, and it really didn't pay off. It only sold as much as Part 1 Definitive. So Xenoblade X Definitive gets announced via a tweet in October of last year. And then when there's a second trailer, it's dropped via another tweet in January. And then they have a couple more tweets leading right before launch. There was something like 4 or 5 videos made total. Now, Monolith Soft, to their credit, went out of their way. They made a whole website. They were constantly updating it daily leading up to the release of the game. Monolith Soft, as a developer, was doing everything in its power on the Japanese side let everyone know that the game was coming. There was all this stuff to learn about, all this stuff to go over. What you're seeing here video is like the overview trailer Nintendo did shortly before launch. But yeah, Nintendo of America didn't want to put this in a direct. It wasn't hitting all eyes like this. It was just unceremoniously dropped via a tweet, in the morning of October, and then in January, and then right before launch, a couple, launch trailers, and they were kind of done with it. They've basically washed their hands because 12, 13 days after the game released, they had their whole giant Switch 2 direct. So they were already moved. It feels like Nintendo of America was moved on from this game before it even came out, and they really didn't give it much of a marketing push at all. And I think that just kind of came from the simple fact that Xenoblade 3 really just didn't really light the sales world on fire. Like, something like Fire Emblem Three Houses sold somewhere in the neighborhood of double or more what Xenoblade 3 sold on the Switch. So I think Nintendo of America is like, we don't understand these kind of games. We don't really like these kind of games. We don't know how to market these kind of games, and they're not really turning a huge presence anyway. So let's not waste any money trying to promote this game more than we have to. So it feels like, as far as the Xenoblade franchise is concerned, it is going to fall onto us, the fans, to sort of push this game. We got to push Xenoblade for SummerSlam. It's going to fall on us, and we're going to have to be the word of mouth for this game, because Nintendo really doesn't seem all that interested in the franchise as a whole. And I can't blame them too hard, because they really, to their credit, Nintendo of America really did try to push Xenoblade 3 as the big game it was, even with the Game of the Year nomination and in a completely snubbed soundtrack award. So they did their best, honestly. I don't know that I would actually say anything was bad about how the way Nintendo of America tried to market Xenoblade 3. It's just that when we got to X, they were clearly disinterested. And the sales are kind of just proving them right, unfortunately. So when it falls to us, here's a sort of do and don't. If you're evangelical for the Church of Xenoblade like I am, a big thing we should not ever do is ever say how this game or this franchise is better than some other similar RPG. Don't do that. Okay, like, you do not have to knock down one game to raise another game up. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of other, famous big RPG franchises in the series, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because plenty of people love both, and there's a very good chance most people who love other RPG franchises that are not necessarily like Xenoblade may still like Xenoblade. So it's going to really fall to us to sort of kind of get the word out there. Because Nintendo's not going to do it, and frankly, I feel like, hey, this is where I stand up and say, like, this is one of the best franchises Nintendo currently has. It certainly the most ambitious, certainly the franchise that pushes its hardware the most, and it certainly has no lack of scope, no lack of ambition. They go 190% out for their soundtracks. They go all out for their scope. They go all out for their content. They don't, their remasters are not shameful ports like Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. They are fully featured. They always go out of their way to add a bunch of new stuff to all their definitive editions. Well, all two of them so far. When they do DLC, they do DLC in massive chunks, where you get a campaign that's 25 hours crit, 50 hours, 100 to 100%. Their DLC campaigns, and they're very fairly priced, especially for that. Not to mention all the other stuff that comes with the DLC that they release. So they're always going well above and beyond what other game companies do for their games. They are trying really, really hard, and they are making very, very beautiful, moving, touching, wonderful games. And it's kind of up to us to sort of like share that love and try to do the best we can, because again, like, I feel like Nintendo's kind of given up on Xenoblade, and for the simple fact that people aren't buying X. Now, I know X is, I've said it, your mileage may vary on X. It is a very different Xenoblade game. It's it's a spinoff. It's not really going to have some of the same things that the trilogy has. So yeah, I don't personally like it as much as the rest of the trilogy, but I still think it's a good game. I still bought it. I still enjoyed it. There's still a lot to love here. So yeah, it's really just gonna boil down to us, I guess, at the end of the day here. So if you do enjoy Xenoblade, make sure to tell anyone who's interested in RPGs that they might enjoy it as well. And you know, if you do enjoy it and you want people to get interested in it, like, just tell them, hey, it's another great game. Like, you don't have to say, oh, it's so much better because it's a much more open world game than say Persona or Metaphor, or like it's got a bigger, you know, it's got a better story or a better narrative than, say, like something even recent like Claire. Don't say that, because one, that's personal, and two, we don't need to knock down nothing to raise Xenoblade up, because Xenoblade stands tall with other great RPGs. And that's all we really need to get out there. And that's all I'm really trying to say here, is that these are great games. They are absolutely worth all your time and money if you're even slightly into the RPG genre. Maybe even if you're not, you can always just drop the games onto easy mode and you can experience all the games have to offer anyways without losing anything. You know, if you're playing something like Rebirth or Clair Obscur, or even any of the Atlas RPGs, and you're like, hey, I'm kind of getting into this genre, I kind of like these sort of like big narrative-driven games, check out Xenoblade. As far as like what could Nintendo do to try to help the sales of this franchise, and here's probably the interesting part of the video. They need to do what I've said before. They need to release them on PC. And this always gets pushback from Nintendo fans who are saying, like, why would they kill their exclusivity? Exclusivity is what sells their system. There's no point in buying the system. And, you know, again, I'm just going to reiterate, there are over 150 million Switches out there. Over 150. Okay? And less than 1 million of those 152 million were interested in buying Xenoblade X. Even the best-selling Xenoblade that we know of, which is Xenoblade 2, sold 2.74 million copies. We are talking about a franchise that sells maybe 1%, maybe 1% or less of the console user base is interested in buying Xenoblade on the Switch. That is just a cold, hard fact. There is absolutely nothing that Nintendo can do at this point to try to help those games. I mean, you could drop the price to $20 each, which maybe that'll get, you know, that's another option, I guess. There is that. Like, they should be dropping the price, especially for the older titles. That would help them a lot, I think, and I think they should do that. But Nintendo is completely uninterested in dropping prices on games anymore. So the best thing they could do at this point is get the PC version, because I feel there are many PC players out there who are interested in Xenoblade, and they're interested in other franchises too, Bayonetta 2 and 3, Fire Emblem, Metroid Dread. They would be interested in these games, but they are not $200 or $300 interested. And when I say two, I mean, like, they're not interested in buying a Switch Lite or a Switch regular or an OLED Switch or even a $500 Switch 2 plus the $60, you know, per pop of each game. They're not that interested. But you know what they would be interested in is they would be interested in buying the games individually for PC. And I think this is where Nintendo's really kind of missing a lot of sales. And I'm sure they're aware of it, and I'm sure they don't care. But again, this is the kind of hardcore, you know, heavy gamer-focused franchise that would sell and find a second life on the PC, even if the PC versions is years after the Switch releases. And I think that's really the only way we'd ever get in like a Xenoblade game to cross 5 million, because even with the best-selling console in Nintendo's history with the Switch, which it's almost there. It just has to beat the DS, which is going to do any day now. Even with the best-selling console in history, we can't get the games to even hit the 3 million barrier, and we're having trouble hitting 2 million for most of them. And then this remaster for X, we haven't even hit 1 million. So again, PC would add a lot to this game's sales and reputation and just getting eyes on it. I hope one day Nintendo does it, but I don't think they ever will, because they are the most stubborn company on planet Earth. I think they would they would rather like the sun go supernova and the heat death of the universe take place before they would ever port a game to PC. They're that stubborn. There is nothing you can do about that. But either way, that's my thoughts on Xenoblade X and its sales. Again, it's up to us to sort of like spread the good word. I hope you guys do. And let's not do it by shaming any other game. Let's just do it by telling how awesome these games are and how much I think other people would enjoy it. And yeah, I hope Nintendo of America comes around, but I could easily see a world in where we're kind of like back to the Wii days and we kind of have to like fight for scraps on this franchise, because no matter how much love and attention and care Monolith puts into it, we're not seeing them. We're just not seeing those sales, and Nintendo has always been awkward at best when it comes to promoting these games. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you on the channel later, dudes.